morning. Why did Jesus become man? That's what we're preparing for in this season of Advent, for Christmas, when God became man, when God came and dwelt among us. But why? Why did he do it? Obviously, there are many different parts to the answer to that he came to take on our human nature, that he came to die on the cross for us. But one aspect that I think sometimes is overlooked is what we see in today's gospel. Notice what Jesus does here. That after answering John's disciples, he turns to the crowd and he questions them. What did you go out into the desert to see? A reed swayed by the wind? Then why did you go out? What did you go out to see? Someone dressed in fine clothing. Well, they're in palaces. Then why did you go out? This isn't the only time in the Gospels Jesus asks people difficult questions. To those first disciples, he challenges them, what do you seek? Or to those coming for healing, what do you want me to do for you? Or to his apostles, who do you say that I am? What is he doing? Is he just using the Socratic method that was hip at the time? No, see, when we talk about Jesus becoming man, we can often turn to the objective, to maybe the Sunday school answer of, he took on our human nature so he could die on the cross and rise from the dead and redeem us from our sins. And this is obviously vitally important. But what can get overlooked in that is that Jesus also became a man so that he could speak to us, so that he could actually question us. What do I mean? Well, so that we could learn that he is actually the answer, that he is actually the answer to the deepest longings of our hearts. And in questioning us, he opens our hearts to seek him, to seek the answer that is found only in him. That the heart of the gospel is an invitation to faith in Jesus Christ. That each and every person must respond, must come to that faith. That he became a man so he could personally deliver to us that invitation into relationship with him. The third week of this preaching series on intentional discipleship, we're looking now at the third and the fourth threshold of conversion, that of openness and seeking. Last week we talked about initial trust and curiosity, those first two thresholds, and it's in this move from curiosity to openness that's kind of the biggest jump, the place people most often get stuck. It's this move from the head to the heart, to just thinking about these truths, to a openness that they might actually shape our lives. So here are the two thresholds as Sherry Weidel describes them. The third threshold, spiritual openness, is that a person acknowledges to him or to herself that and to God that he or she is open to the possibility of personal and spiritual change. And that openness is not a commitment to change, but it's acknowledging that they are open to the possibility of change. And then the fourth threshold, spiritual seeking, is when a person moves from being essentially passive to actively seeking to know God, who is calling to him or her. It is, if you will, dating with a purpose, but not yet marriage. Seekers are asking, are you the one to whom I will give myself? At this stage, the seeker is engaged in an urgent spiritual quest, seeking to know whether he or she can commit to Christ in his church. In Jesus' questioning, we see him trying to move us to openness to faith, openness to relationship with him, to recognize that our hearts are not content. Jesus could rephrase the same questions to us. What did you come to church today to see? Or what did you go on the internet to see? What are you looking for? What do you seek? We know we're made for so much more, and yet we seldom stop long enough to admit that our lives are missing something. Because the pivotal swing point between simple curiosity and this openness is recognizing that I'm finally willing to have something change. I need something to change. There are many different things that can hold us back from this. Complacency, being convinced that we're fine just as we are, that sure, my life's kind of a mess, but at least it's my mess. Or we fear the opinion of others, of what they would think of us if we started to live differently, of how our family or friends would treat us. There's also often attachment to sin, that part of us doesn't want to be free. Part of us thinks we never could be free. Part of us fears what it would mean to be free. St. Augustine describes it like a bird being tied down. Whether it's by a heavy chain or by the thinnest of threads, the bird still cannot fly until it is free. That shift from curiosity to openness is often just like that. We're held back by the thinnest of threads. And yet the Lord sees our hearts. The Lord knows us. He knows what we need to bring us into that place of openness. Sometimes he works through difficult life circumstances. Sometimes it's the death of a loved one, or a difficult illness or injury, or tragedy that happens in the wider world that wakes us up. But he also can work through positive life circumstances. I feel like it's every other day I'm talking to some man from the parish who says it's either was when he met his wife or when he had his first child, that was the moment. That was a key moment where he was finally open to change and conversion. For others, it is a friend or a coworker or a classmate who walked with them, encouraged them, prayed with them, prayed for them. Perhaps the Lord is calling you to be that person in someone else's life. Because when that openness comes, it is a critical moment. Because if, as I said last week, over half of Catholics are still in those first and second thresholds, then when someone moves into this place of openness, they now have become a minority Catholic, so to speak. That they're probably more intentionally engaging their faith than most of their friends and family, than most of the Catholics that they know. And they might feel a little bit like the odd one out, that their hunger for the Lord isn't being reciprocated or matched by other Catholics. This is not an easy spot to be in if you've ever experienced this. This is a critical moment because if unaccompanied, this can be the point in which people look outside of the church for spiritual guidance and support because they don't seem to see it in the church. This is actually part of why we're preaching this series, because the fullness of revelation of Jesus Christ resides in his church. And we as members of that church need to know how to walk with people into deeper relationship with Christ, how to live in the fullness that we have received and how to share it joyfully with others. So what do we do once we or a friend of ours are in this place of openness? What is next? Well, about 7 years ago when I arrived in Duluth, Minnesota for my first year there as a focused missionary, I was connected with a senior guy named Teddy. And Teddy was Catholic, but like we talked about last week, he'd probably spend most of his Catholic life in the first or second threshold. So he would go to Sunday Mass. He was around the Newman Center, but faith had taken a back seat in his life, to school, to relationships, to sports, to music. But some things had happened in his life that summer, and so he came back for his senior year. He was actually kind of open for the first time that the Lord might actually have a bigger place in his life. The Lord might actually want to make a difference in his life. So what did I do? Well, what I told to Teddy is the same thing I'd tell to any of you, that you need to spend time with the Lord and let him reveal himself to you. To discover that God isn't just the creator of the world. He's not just a subject you learned about in Catholic school or in Sunday catechism, but it's someone who actually wants to have a living and real and intimate relationship with you. And that we can talk about that all we want, but until you're willing to take the time to let him speak that to you, you aren't going to get much farther. And so Teddy started getting up early and coming to the Newman Center for a holy hour in the morning. Just time with Jesus. I really didn't have to do much other than be there, encourage him, challenge him when he slept in and made excuses. Because this movement from openness to seeking, it's essentially the shift from this passive openness to actually actively seeking it. As Sherry puts it, it's this urgent spiritual quest that the seeker is looking to see whether or not they can commit themselves to Christ and his church. And this often comes with a lot of wrestling with the reality of our life, of our brokenness, of our sin. That this is why it's so important during this time to be connected with other Catholics who are seeking, other Catholics who are disciples. For someone entering the church, this is part of the purpose of OCIA, that it gives an opportunity to engage in a structured way with the deep realities, the deep life-changing realities of our faith. But to have people around you to help you enter into that, to enter into this relationship with Christ. But if you're already Catholic, there's opportunities as well. I think this is where a small group can be absolutely vital, being a part of the brotherhood or of walking with purpose. Because in this time of seeking, we're basically coming to terms with the implication of what it means that Jesus is meant to be the Lord of our life, and wrestling with that, wrestling with the difficulties and challenges, with the hard truths. And We need people by our side. We're not meant to try to go through this alone. Wrestling with the fact that if Jesus really teaches what it says he teaches, then I have to change the way that I'm living. Some things have to go. And if he really gave us his church, and the church really teaches with his authority, then I have to change how I think about almost everything. And if he really is who he says he is, then I need to put him at the center of my life. Some other things need to take back seat. And if he really loved me enough to die on the cross for me, if he really went through that for me, then I should love him in return. About 3 months or so into that year, Teddy and I were driving together somewhere, and he flips on a song, and he says to me, Josh, this song is my relationship with the Lord now. He flipped on a song called Love Like This by Ben Rector. I'm not going to sing it for you, don't worry. And Ben Rector had wrote this song about when he had his first daughter. But listening to it with Teddy, knowing what he had been through, having seen what he'd been through, it almost moved me to tears. That this was a song of a man in love. A man who had seen his whole life be reshaped and reordered around the love that he had encountered. The last line of the chorus simply says, I have never known a love like this. It was a song of conversion. A song of one who had found what he had been searching for his whole life. Who had finally found the love that he was looking for, and whose whole life was different because of it. That he didn't want the life he had once had, because his heart had been captured by a greater love. Friends, that's what the Lord wants for each of us. It's not just for a few lucky people. It's not just for the saints. No, the Lord wants every single person in this church to know that kind of love. That the questions, that the longings, that the deepest desires of our heart would find their answer in him. That our seeking would result in finding him and the church that he has given to us. That we, like those apostles then, out of the love that we have found, would drop everything and follow him as his disciples. But more on that next week. For us this week, the questions of our Lord to us. What did you come to see? What are you looking for? What is your heart searching for and longing for? Take time this Mass, this week, to bring these questions to the Lord. To allow him to invite you deeper into the depths of your own heart, where he wants to encounter you, where he wants to speak the truth of his love and his goodness into your heart. That the deepest longings of our heart, all that we have sought after and looked for, that we'd be found in him and him alone.